As you know, I recently left my corporate job and I've been in total recovery mode, all about self-care. One of my new routines is the nighttime shower before bed. There's just something about washing away the day and that reflection that's been super helpful for me. I've been using one of our partners, Osea's Mega Moisture Duo. This combo body oil and body lotion are so freaking incredible. It literally feels like I'm at a spa. I realized that the secret is seaweed and other skin level ingredients that are normally reserved for face products. And that's why I was so excited when Osea became one of our partners. And, we're so grateful for partners like this because one, they keep the show going, but they're also super good for all of our listeners and for our own well-being. So if you want to have that nighttime bliss like I am doing, you can get 10% off your first order site-wide with code DATEABLE at oseamalibu.com. You'll get free samples with every order and free shipping on orders over $60. So head to oseamalibu.com and use the code DATEABLE for 10% off. Let us know which products you end up going with. Share them in social. Super excited to see what you end up choosing. I was so excited to get my shipment from Last Bottle Wines in the mail the other day, full of incredible red wines, all from Napa Valley. I love wine tasting, so having this to my door couldn't be happier. Also, couldn't be more excited that today's episode is brought to you by Last Bottle Wines. If you don't know already, they're a Napa-based online wine shop with a twist. They offer just one handpicked wine per day until it sells out, and they're always at incredible prices. We're talking 30 to 70% off retail. And the best part is that there's no subscriptions, no fees, and no minimum purchase. And I could not be more excited to bring this offer right now because they're having a marathon sale, which is coming up March 28th and 29th. Even better, we're offering Dateable listeners 10% off your first order with code DATEABLE. So if you are a wine lover like me, this is a great time to join. And did I mention that shipping is 100% free? So what are you waiting for? Mark your calendar for March 28th and 29th, or get on it earlier if you want. You can sign up at lastbottlewines.com and use code DATEABLE and find out why Last Bottle is the most fun way to discover and buy amazing wine.
The Dateable podcast features real stories from real people of how they make modern dating work, or not. I'm your host, Yue, former dating coach turned dating insider, if you will. On each episode, you'll hear commentary from my producer, Julie Kraftchick, and other surprise co-hosts. This episode of Dateable is brought to you by 500 Brunches. 500 Brunches connects like-minded people with similar interests to meet in real life over brunch. You answer a quick questionnaire about your interests and how you spend your time, and then they'll match you in small groups of 6 to 8 at a brunch spot in San Francisco. Get a free entry into a brunch now by signing up at 500brunches.com and using the code DATEABLE. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating. And when we talk about modern dating, finances seem to come up as something we talk about with our friends, but couples don't necessarily talk about the really important financial questions, right? And I've personally I'm really uncomfortable talking about money. I don't know about you, Julie. I'm just uncomfortable talking about anything like splitting and who's responsible for what. So today we're going to get to the bottom of it all. We have Joe Gavazza here. He's a founder of Gavazza Wealth Management and financial advisor since 2002. He manages asset accumulation, protection, and distribution via wealth management strategies.
How's everyone doing out there? Hey.
And you look super credible because you have a blazer on and pants.
And a black binder.
To me, if you have a blazer and pants and a binder, you're pretty legit.
I thought about showing up without pants, but I didn't know how I was going to go over, so.
You didn't get the memo? And for anybody curious, how do we record these episodes? We're actually on the floor. Without our shoes. It's just one of those situations. It's super zen, we try to keep it casual and fun. So that's where we're at. But let's talk about money. I want to read this statistic really quick. According to Citibank, 57% of divorced couples cited money problems as the primary reason for the demise of their marriage. Joe, what do you think about that?
It doesn't surprise me, actually. 40% of couples before marriage don't even talk about money. So people get to a certain point in their relationship where they kind of build up all the stress, and then it comes out, and it comes out as an argument because there's been no one's really laid any framework until then. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
So why do you think people don't want to talk about it? What is it about money that makes people uncomfortable?
Growing up, I feel like people have told us our whole lives that you don't talk about what money and religion
and
generally politics exactly. And that's a part of it. But I think that we have to give ourselves a little bit more credit and start to observe and, discover what people's goals are. And maybe we're not doing such a great job doing that, identifying and setting goals early on. I think if you set goals early on, get aligned, then maybe that 52% of people could have had a better outcome.
I guess the issue when it comes to dating and money is that when you first start dating someone, their money is their business. My money is my business. At what point does their money become my business as well?
Exactly. And that's pretty much a feeling, isn't it? In the beginning, you're dating someone, and guess what? That person that you're dating owns all of their own bad habits.
Yeah,
right. I own all of my bad habits, and I own all of my good habits, and they own all of their good habits. But at some point in the relationship, if you're getting serious, you kind of have to identify a point where you say, if we're going to get serious and this is going to go any further, then I might need to observe some sort of habits that this person has and maybe bring up a couple of topics, because it doesn't have to be, the money conversation doesn't have to happen all at once.
Right.
It can be brought up subtly. And so it's not really a subject that you just blurt out unless you really know each other, which is fine because some people actually do that.
Yeah. But it's like breaking the ice. Once you bring it up, then you can just bring up anything.
There are gentle ways to break the ice.
What are some ways that you would suggest, like, to someone, if you're just starting to date someone, some ways to, like, kind of scope it out without being overtly obvious?
So my recommendation for people that are just starting to date someone is only to observe their habits. When you find out that you actually want to be with somebody, it's starting to get serious, just saying, wow, I can actually have a future with this person. Right at that cusp where things are starting to turn, maybe open yourself up, reveal something about yourself, and tell them a little bit about you. I've given examples to clients, maybe casually in conversation, bring up something about, I kind of updated my budget today, or I enrolled in my 401k, or I increased my contribution to my 401k. Just bring up the topic casually and see kind of what takes.
If they're like, what's a 401k? Or they're like, I contribute to mine too.
I feel like most couples bring up money, at least when they're dating. It's either in the terms of they have an abundance of it or they have a lack of it. So it's kind of like, I got a promotion today, or I'm so broke. But nobody ever talks about their money management with each other, which is kind of important to talk about.
And I think it's super interesting is people, like, especially women, always judge men based on their, like, job and like how much they make and all of that, but they don't think about like their habits. And it's not just how much you make, but it's like your earning potential and how you actually spend that money.
Well, you kind of nailed it right there. It's all about the mindset, and that's the key to the formula. In my opinion, when you're talking about goals as a couple, the goals that have or are a product of any type of money and mindset, you really need to know where the person stands in terms of income and savings and debt, but most importantly, what their mindset is. Because if they know how to budget, if they're not running up $30,000 or $40,000 on their credit card and making the minimum payment, or $80,000 or whatever, depends on where you're at in life, right? If they're not coming into a relationship with those hurdles, then maybe you can really build together. And not to say that, by the way, someone can't overcome that, but they've got to be able to they've got to
Work
be
on
able,
it.
they've got to be able to commit to a plan and align goals with you.
So before we go into money rehab, what are some red flags that people can pay attention to in terms of what you were saying, mindset and behaviors?
In the beginning, you clearly don't want to be with someone who's bouncing or getting their credit card declined at.
Oh, that's never a good sign.
It's just a sign of poor money management.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and it happens to everybody. I get it at some point in their life, and hopefully it's not the one time you're taking out this amazing person and you're so stressed out you forget to pay your credit card bill. Oh my goodness. And by the way, you spent $300 instead of $80 because you guys are having such a great time and it just put you over. I get that happens. But if it becomes like a consistent thing where or if somebody's borrowing money from you or they just seem to be leaning on you quite a bit early on, I mean, who really does that?
Mm-hmm.
Most people like to go into relationships standing on their own. So those are some red flags early on.
I think one other thing, you could also observe how they're spending money on you. Because, especially from a man to a woman, usually it's not the reverse. So it's harder in that case. But in the moment, it sounds amazing. And you're like, oh, I'm going on all these fancy trips. I'm doing all this stuff. Yes, if someone can support that, then that's great. But there's also a chance that they're racking up debt doing that type of stuff.
I have these two friends. They're married to each other. But when they were dating, she was very much enamored by the way he was spending on her. He would take her out to elaborate dinners, elaborate theater shows, buy her gifts. And after they got married, she ended up having to help him pay for his debt because not only was he wining and dining her, but he also was wining and dining the women before he met her.
And this is after they got married?
After they got married, she ended up paying for debt. So I actually hear this story happening a lot where couples don't know each other's debt situation and then they get married and they're like, wait, you're $50,000 in the hole and I have to help you pay for that. How do you bring up this? You talked about debt. Okay. How do you bring that up?
It's pretty much the same way you reveal yourself first.
Okay.
And it depends really on where the relationship is. If you're early on, you reveal yourself. But before you get married, if you're not willing to put everything out on the table, there might be a problem. Mm. So if you are so serious and you think marriage is in the future, maybe you're engaged, maybe you're not, but you're serious. At the end of the day, why shouldn't you be able to say, hey, let's set a date. I need to know about a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a drink, have a cocktail, and just lay it out.
I've noticed that student debt is the least sensitive debt for people to talk about. That's actually a good way to bring up debt. I just paid off the last of my student loan bills.
Right. It's like an accomplishment.
Yeah, I accomplished. I have no more debt. What about you? Do you have any student loans that you're paying off? Right.
Yeah.
It's a good way because people aren't as sensitive about that.
Right.
Sure. Absolutely. Because it's common to have someone that has student debt. I mean, this is the way we all get through school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it comes down to conversations about being spenders or savers too, how you actually manage that money.
That's a mindset. That's the mindset you were talking about.
That is absolutely a mindset.
Yeah. Are you the type of person who has to put away a little bit each month from your paycheck, or are you the type of person who likes to spend to the max?
Right. It might be you just spend your whole paycheck and you're living paycheck to paycheck, or you're in debt. It could be either or.
Mm-hmm. And a good way to bring that up is that I've seen people bring up their parents. Oh, my parents are major savers, which is true. My parents save, and I feel like they're not enjoying life as much because they're saving so much. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on that?
So, yeah, I've heard that quite a bit. And I feel like for some reason, generations are a little bit different than their parents' generations.
Definitely. Many
people out there will take their parents' strategy in stride and kind of go with it.
Yeah.
But then a lot of them will say, well, my life is different.
Yeah.
And this is the way I'm going to live it.
I think I consider myself a saver, but I also don't save to the max that I'm not enjoying life.
Sure.
But my parents
balance
save to the max. So it could be an opener that I inherited this trait from my parents, but I also saw how it like was a disservice to them.
Yeah.
You kind of just have like a more fluid conversation.
Definitely.
And sometimes it has to do with, the way where people are in the world. I mean, everybody's got these fixed costs, right? We all have to have a roof over our head. We all have to eat. We all have to do certain things.
Yeah.
And then we've got our variables, especially with your parents. You've got children to raise, right? They've got children to raise. Being single in a big city or a small city, we definitely have to have a roof over our head. We have to eat, but we have some leeway here. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but to raise a child these days, it's $235,000 to raise a child from 0 to 18 years old.
Yeah. That little fucker might end up being such a dick to you later on, and you're like, you owe me $230,000.
But I think that's a good point, though. It's like in a big city, though, like someone might not have much savings, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're like not equipped long term. Like you and them could get together and you guys could move somewhere that's more financially affordable and like have a different lifestyle. So I don't know if you can like necessarily judge people solely on like savings and some of like the hard stats anymore.
True.
I guess we can't really judge people at all when you're just dating them because you're not combining your lives yet. So what are some ways that we can make our own financial situations more robust?
Well, here's the thing. Money and having a great job and being a hard worker are a part of the formula, but it's entirely superficial.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So the main key is that you have to have the mindset. That's what's not superficial.
Right.
So you have to have the habits, the good habits. Okay, guess what? I pay all my bills and I have a little bit saved for my emergency fund and I put a little bit towards my retirement. And guess what? I can go to concerts and travel a little bit as well because I've got all of that balanced out.
Totally.
So what's most important is not really the job and the money, but it's the mindset.
Well, because you could lose it all tomorrow.
You could lose it all tomorrow.
And I think that's why like judging someone by their occupation and all that, like it doesn't mean anything. It's all like how they manage it. And I think to your point, which I agree with, it's like if you want someone that's financially responsible, you got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
You can't expect someone to save you.
So what are some of those good habits that we should be practicing?
The number one thing is everyone should have a budget. Everyone should know.
Monthly? Annually?
Monthly.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're going to have unexpected expenses no matter what. Everyone does. And so you take out your budget monthly, figure out what your costs are, and in your budget, you should be trying to achieve a savings, a savings account, I should say, that is equivalent to 6 to 9 months of all of your expenses. So if you know what your budget is for your month, right, what are your expenses? Multiply that between 6 months. That's your minimum that you should have.
So that's not
in your savings account.
I've always heard earnings, your 6 months of your earnings, but you're saying 6 months of your expenses.
Right. Imagine
it makes sense if you lost your job. Like, how could you support yourself?
Having that savings account is empowering.
Oh, totally.
You don't have to take the next job that comes your way.
I want to go back to when you were talking about allocation. How do you feel about, because people always complain dating is so expensive. Going on dates is expensive. Women are like, I have to, get new dresses and makeup and all that. And men are like, I have to pay for these drinks and dinners. Should people be allocating money in their budget for dating?
Absolutely.
And how much of their annual income or monthly income?
It's probably up to them, right?
That should be a portion of their entertainment income.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't really give you a percentage because you have to know what their fixed costs are going to be. How much, what are the things that you have to meet? You have to pay rent. You have to pay your mortgage, right? One or the other. You have to eat. You have certain things you have to pay for. Figure out in your budget what those things that are must-haves, right? And then see what your variable costs are. And then you have to make some adult decisions, Do you want to go to the baseball game with your buddies? Or do you want to allocate a little bit more entertainment money to a date with, this amazing woman you met.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
So that's where the adult decisions come in. But at the end of the day, no matter what you decide, it should be that you've met your budget, you've cleared through the month with hopefully a little bit of savings in your budget.
This is one of the complaints that I just cannot stand hearing, which is dating is so expensive. I feel like, I always spend so much money on dating. And I'm like, then you should stop going on all these dates that go nowhere. I think people need to be smarter when it comes to dating and spending money on dates. Don't go out on a date with everyone that you match with online. People need to be more selective. And when your entertainment budget runs out, stop going on dates. That's actually a great way.
Do more this could be a double-edged sword because you don't want people to think that you have no money, but you could do more cheaper coffee dates or park dates as the initial date. And then once they're someone you want to invest in, step it up. But then you run into issues of people thinking you're broke because you're suggesting to go to the park. I don't know.
Very creative with that one.
I'm just going to throw this out there because I know we're talking about money and dating, but at the end of the day, we're not really dating someone for their money, right? Because again,
hope not.
Again, that's more of it's more of a superficial thing. But you can get creative, right? And you can do whatever you have to do in terms of having fun and getting to know somebody, because that's what dating's all about, really, right? It's just getting to know their personality, getting to know their mindset. And I've gone on, so I'm engaged, right?
Yes,
so
this. I forgot to mention that.
That's fine. That's fine. But we have no problem going out to buy dinner, but we choose sometimes to take an urban hike or go to
make dinner.
The Japanese tea garden, right? Or make dinner, or all these other fun types of dating experiences. And early on, and by the way, these types of dates shouldn't be just early on or in the first few dates. They should be forever, because you have to have that sort of balance. You have to be able to, do the creative stuff.
Right.
And maybe hopefully be able to do go to a charity event and maybe buy something off the silent auction block, or just go out and have a good dinner or birthday dinner.
And,
you want to.
But isn't it interesting that with dating and then relationships, in the beginning with dating, you want to shower each other with as many, impressive things as possible. And then once you're in a couplehood, you are trying to find ways to save money together, right? It kind of goes like that. In the beginning, you want to overspend. And then once you're comfortable with each other, okay.
So I think people think they need to impress.
Yeah, in the beginning. But then when they're in a couplehood, it's kind of okay, we're in this together. So let's talk about that now. If someone's in a relationship if two people are in a relationship and they're talking about and thinking about a future together, what are some ways that couples can handle their finances? I know there's joint accounts, separate accounts. What do you suggest?
Yeah, right. Well, just going back to, when we first start dating, of course we want to court each other. Of course we do. And we're going to have a good time, and we're going to try and not be, for me personally, I'm going to try and not be that boring saver, because I'm a financial advisor and that's just what I do, right? So I'm going to have a lot of fun, but I'm going to try and mix it up. But later on down the road, there's these common goals that have to be addressed. What do we want to do for the rest of our life? We're just going to continue go to Vegas on a whim or what? So probably not, by the way, probably not.
So what about spending habits? Should you have sort of the same, should you and your partner have the same spending habits?
Yeah, the savers and savers work well, or spenders and spenders.
Yeah, so this kind of goes all together. For one, most couples will compromise, right? You can kind of bring it in a little bit. But a saver is going to get super frustrated with someone who's a spender.
Yes.
They're going to feel like they're just being irresponsible. Mm-hmm. And a spender is going to go out and spend and just feel like the saver is boring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's going to be a conflict. If you can't come to a conclusion, then it might not work out. But guess what? I mean, pulling things together doesn't have to be 50-50, by the way. If you're aligned with your goals, you can make it 70-30, depending on maybe somebody makes more money and they don't really care. They want to go out and spend money. Right. But in terms of like a joint account and how finances are dealt with, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but 42% of people that have joint accounts also have individual accounts. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the traditional way of having a joint account, or when you get married, right? The traditional way is to just bring everything together.
Yeah.
And that kind of gives people a comfort, and it's a symbol of unity, which I understand. Mm-hmm. But in today's environment, we have Venmo, PayPal, all sorts of different easy ways to I
cringe when I see my friends Venmoing their husbands or their wives. It just makes me cringe. I just don't get it. But I'm also from a very traditional household where I think your income should, you should just have a joint account. But in today's environment, like you're saying, what's happening is like as we get married later in life, we feel like we really earned that money we made before meeting that person. So when you join accounts, it's kind of like, well, you didn't earn what, you don't really deserve what I've made in the last 36 years. And that I've also had friends who have assets and they have real estate or they have inheritance. And once they get married, they have a hard time saying, well, this is also my husband's or this is also my wife's. What do you have to say about that?
Well, first, I think you should do a whole segment on, if I'm married, should I Venmo my spouse at dinner?
Do you? I want to know.
No.
But I think that's up to the couple. It is. I mean, if that works for the couple, then that works, right?
No, but there's also the more modern way where if you find a goal, you get a goal, you determine what your goals are. Basically, in the beginning, if you're living together, right, and you're renting, you have rent to pay, and you have groceries, and PG&E, and cable, and all those little things. Maybe it's not such a bad idea to set up a joint account and put up a little bit of money every month in that account and start
for joint expenses.
For joint expenses, exactly. And once you've met all of those, then you have your separate accounts, which seems to be the way things are going these days.
Just out of curiosity, here's a question. You have a joint account with all your joint expenses. I want to take you out to dinner for your birthday. Where does that money come out of? Joint account or my account?
That's definitely a personal preference. My fiance and I pay from our own accounts.
If it's like treating the other person.
Exactly.
I'm sure it works. I mean, every couple's different. How they figure out things, how they make it work is very different. But what are some common problems you see in couples who come to you? Some of the conflicts that they see that they didn't really see early on in their relationship.
Yeah, sometimes it's just really hard to align the goals and how to achieve them. And so they come to me and they say, this is what we want to do. These are our goals. We want to buy a house. We want to have kids. This is what we make. How do we go about it? And so they come to me to determine what their goals are financially, because we'll set them up with what the averages are or what they specifically want to do. And then we'll determine what they want. Other things are like just keeping them on target, budgeting. And we've talked about this before a little bit, but how to make important financial decisions. And some of them just want a roadmap. They literally just want to come in, like get a financial plan and take it on their own. But a lot of them want hand holding. So in those times, what we do is we set up everything for them and we just kind of dictate, hey, this is what you need to do. I know your situation. Let's get everything structured. And it turns out to be where, in this day and age, everything's automatic. So bank accounts, you get your paycheck, things go in certain accounts, certain things are paid. And so it could be that easy. But some people just want the roadmap as well.
Has anybody ever come to you and said, we're really facing this problem now, but we didn't realize that this was an issue?
It's more like one partner definitely knows there's an issue, and they want to give a picture to their other partner what it looks like.
So it's like people aren't on the same page.
They're not on the same page. So they're coming. One is a saver, one's a spender, right? Mm-hmm. They come in and we put all the information together for them, and we present it in a financial plan, and then both sides can see exactly where they stand.
Yeah. And also, I think it's important to talk about how everything is relative. So in spending habits, you may be a saver in your own mind, right? But you could also be a spender relative to your partner, right?
Sure.
And it's not one or the other. Like there's spectrums of the whole thing, I'm assuming, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So how can we have some tactics. Obviously, your goals need to be aligned. I think the goals discussion is something that can happen earlier on in a relationship. It doesn't have to be financial goals, but people talk about, I want to be married with kids and a house. Yeah.
How are you going to get there? 5 or 10 years.
Where do you want to be in 5-10 years? And that could be part of that discussion.
Absolutely.
It's how are we going to finance this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What are some really sensitive areas that people have a hard time talking about with you?
Oh, income and debt.
Easily.
Mm-hmm. Those are the first two.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I know that they're very sensitive subjects because people don't necessarily want to talk about how much they've racked up, if they have. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you have to start from somewhere. So nobody should be embarrassed by it, by the way.
Yeah.
You're starting from today.
Uh-huh.
When you're creating your financial plan and creating your goals, what you do is find out, this is how much debt I have. This is how much income I have. This is my starting point. This is not my ending point. So This is what I'm working off of. Let me knock down my debt. Let me increase my income. There's multiple ways of doing all of that. So I'm sure we're not going to go into it here. But you need to game plan. You need to game plan and get your mind around your financial situation in order to be maybe confident and go out and.
Mm-hmm. I want to pose a question to you before we go into takeaways. So I find this very culturally different than what I grew up with. I was born and raised in China. In China, if you want to date, you have to first present your pay stubs of how much you make. You have to own a house and you have to own a car for men. So this is why there's an issue in China now, because real estate is so expensive, cars are so expensive, that there's a lot of single men because they don't have these basic requirements. But they argue that, I'd rather find this out in the very beginning than start dating them, having feelings for them, and realizing that we can't really build a life together. What do you think about that? Just get it all over with in the very beginning.
I'm going to refer back to what we said before. I think that's amazing, number one. But I also think that all that stuff can be superficial because you can lose your job. You can lose your house if you go bankrupt. You can lose all of these things that you've done. But do you have the mindset to continuously, month after month after month, structure your life, structure your budget so that you can be successful? Mm-hmm. And by the way, if somebody loses all of that, most people that know how to structure their lives and budget will bounce back. Mm-hmm. They can make it again.
Yep.
They can make it again.
Very good point.
Totally.
But if you're a super big risk taker and you've taken on so much debt and you're just like, throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, generally that doesn't work very well. So you gotta know who you're getting involved with. I mean, is the person actually responsible with their assets?
Yep. Right. That's more important.
I think that honestly, like, we're going to go to takeaways. That is my biggest takeaway. Yeah. It's like all about the mindset. Mm-hmm. It's all about like scoping out what's a goal to someone and a priority to them, because someone might not be thinking about having children and a family and buying a house and whatever may be, or building a life with another person. They may be just so in the now, and like that might not work for you. So it's like making sure that you're on the same page. And it's not that one is right or wrong. It's just a personality and what they want out of life.
Yeah. And I think also when you have financial disagreements with your partner, it's more of a symptom of misaligned goals versus, like people citing that it's a number one reason for divorce. Actually, it isn't. It's part of a deeper issue, which is your goals aren't aligned.
Right.
So we have to define goals in relationships even early on. When you just start dating someone, it's good to know what their 5-year plan looks like or 10-year plan.
What they want out of life.
And how, more importantly, how they plan on getting there. Anybody can say,
That's
I
true.
want $1 million and a horse and a car, blah, blah, blah. But how are you actually going to get there? My second takeaway is mindset. You keep mentioning mindset, and it's actually slowly making sense to me now. It's behaviors that you can train your mind to do. Mm-hmm. And it's not that you have to already be born with this mindset, but what is the mindset you ideally want to have when it comes to your finances? And it's also good to know what your partner's mindset is. And the third takeaway, which is related, is that where we are financially today, we shouldn't be judging someone for their current status because we're all works in progress, just like we are mentally works in progress. So where someone stands today financially is not as important as where they want to be in the future. So it's more important to not so much judge them for maybe not having a job or not having like this house or car, but where do they want to be and how they plan on getting
even
there.
Debt, like if they have it, like it's not that they're a bad person and they're not someone you can date. It's like how they plan to get out of it, if they disclose it, like all
what's
the certain
their game
things.
plan?
Yeah,
Everyone's got to have a game plan.
Exactly.
But this also applies to people who are very financially robust too. You know, you can't just say, well, this person seems very well off right now that they're going to be this way in 5 years. They also need a plan. Everybody needs a plan. So it goes for anybody who's lacking or they have an abundance.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm going to start getting my finances in order after this. It's all about mindset. I'm going to get into a headspace.
Actually, one other tactic that I have done recently that has been helpful is to like for a week, see where you're spending money. So like I realized how much money I spend in like Starbucks and like see if you can like cut down on areas that aren't as like important. Or I realized all these reoccurring subscriptions I had and I literally cut like 4 of them. So, like, it's really helpful just to see what's going on.
A big picture.
It's not even judging or making a, like, budget from it. It's just seeing and then seeing where you can cut.
I put myself on a $100 budget per week.
Wow.
3 times a year. Just to see
if you can do it?
Just see if I can still do it. Just to get myself back into
being more frugal.
And that doesn't include, of course, like, of course, I got to pay my mortgage and all that. But at the end of the day, like, I don't need to spend, we all go out to dinner and spend $40 on sushi or this and that.
At least,
I literally try and eat with $100.
Wow.
And that's it.
For a whole week?
For a whole week.
That's like my groceries. Yeah, I know.
Have you heard of Soylent? That's a great way to do it.
I literally do it for myself just to ground myself.
I think that's a great tactic. Yeah. I feel like
it's not like a recommendation that everybody should go out and do it.
No, but it's a good exercise.
Since we're sharing.
And if you're like my ex-boyfriend.
You revealed yourself.
I mean, I think people need to find what works for them, but just like be more conscious. I think the other thing too, it's like thinking about the future at the same, like it's hard when you're in the now. It's like, but if you do want that stuff, like you got to think about it.
I was going to say, I feel like I've always been financially responsible, but after this conversation, I just realized I never think about the future. I'm very reactive with my money, so I just save or I spend. I save or I spend. If I spend a little too much, I save. But I don't think about like, what am I saving for? What is my 5-year plan or 3-year plan or 1-year plan? Back to your tactic though. My ex-boyfriend and I in New York, we used to do $100 weekends. So the two of us would have $100 for the entire weekend to live on. And it ended up being a really fun exercise because then we got really creative with things we could do as a couple.
Yeah. I've got something great in San Francisco. Urban hike.
Urban hikes are the best.
They're the best.
Fantastic.
They're the best. The city is 7 miles across. Anybody can walk 7 miles, right? And just do it. There's a crazy amount of things to do in 7 miles.
And you know what else you should be doing when you're doing an urban hike? listening to our podcast. It's a great way to kill time, isn't it?
That is.
Clearly.
Good plug for our
Clearly.
podcast.
While you're at it, go to www.gavazza.com, Gavazza.com, Wealth Management.
You can just get everything done. Everything done. You can save money, get your exercise on, and learn all about everything important.
Email a financial advisor and say, let's get started.
After that 7 miles, you'll just be a better version of yourself. Why wouldn't you want to do it?
I feel amped up. I mean, why not?
But on a serious note, if people do want to find you, they can go to Gavazza.com.
Correct. Gavazza.
I love that last
Awesome.
name.
And we'll link
Gavazza.
to your page
Fantastic.
as well, so you can find it on our website.
I would love
as
to hear from
well.
your listeners.
Definitely.
A little feedback even.
And we also want to hear about how people do their own finances with their partners. That's such an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own tactics. What works for you? We want to hear all about it. And of course, we just want to have you as a guest on our show, our listeners. We can always anonymize you to protect your identity, blah, blah, blah. You've heard the whole spiel. But again, we would love to have you as a guest on our show. Thank you, Joe, for coming on our show. We really appreciate it. I hope this gives people inspiration to take hold of their finances and take control of their future.
Yeah.
On that note,
Stay
dateable.
Your action item for this week is to think about all of the financial pain points you faced in either your previous relationships or in dating. Identify these areas and figure out a plan to address them earlier next time you are faced with these pain points. Use some of Joe's advice, which includes observing spending habits, asking the right questions, and communicating your financial goals. So, for example, if a major pain point for you is your partner's debt that you find out about way too late, then it's important to bring up the issue of debt earlier in dating in a way that's kosher, of course, such as you bring up that maybe you just finished your student loans, for example, and you want to celebrate, and then see how the person you're dating reacts to that. If you didn't know already, in our off-season, we launched a premium series called the Why Series, where we dissect, analyze, and offer solutions to some of the most common dating conundrums. We've had some great feedback on how actionable these episodes are, so check it out on our website under the tab Why Series. Or you can now buy directly from iTunes Music. The most efficient way to meet new people is a combination of online and offline. 500 Brunches has your offline covered. Connect over brunch with new friends. Come alone or bring a buddy. There is always a table full of friendly faces, mimosas, and eggs Benedict. Sign up at 500brunches.com and use the code DATEABLE for a free entry. To connect with us, visit dateablepodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all under Dateable Podcast.